Hi guys, and welcome back to the Early Bird Photo News. I've had a few exciting and stressful days because after a lot of negotiating and back and forth, we're able to secure our dream property in the mountains surrounded by bushes with a nice big backyard and a nice space underneath the house that I can make into a YouTube studio. So with the backyard, I have big plans because it's pretty bare at the moment, but I want to transform it into a bird paradise, and I also look forward to making that YouTube studio underneath the house because I'm kind of sick of always filming in these Airbnbs. So once we're actually able to move into the house sometime in February, I'll start making some videos showing you the progress of transforming the backyard and the YouTube studio. So stay tuned for that, and while you're at it, why don't you hit that subscribe button right now as well. If you're a Z9 owner, you might actually want to check out the link that I put for you down there in the description where you can check your serial number, because a bunch of Z9s have been affected where Nikon seems to have used inferior parts that can cause the lens release button on the camera to actually get stuck, which means you might not be able to get your lens or teleconverter off the camera when you want to take it off, and I suppose that can be very annoying in the field. Apparently it's not a large range of affected camera, but if you own a Z9 and it is affected, I would definitely want to get it fixed, because I would hate to literally get stuck with it in the field, not being able to get my lens on or off. After the long break I had to take due to my illness, I'm also finally starting to edit some images again from 4 to 6 months ago, and I'm especially excited about the images for my next video about the birds of paradise, the victorious rifle birds that display with their wings up, and I've taken so many images on the day that I spent with them, way over 10,000. The conditions were very difficult. It was dark rainforest, moving birds, so I had to use high ISO, but I feel like with the right editing technique, Dix or Pure Raw for denoising, and then my masterclass workflow, I can get some good results even in these very difficult conditions. And if you guys are not quite sure how to get the most out of your images, especially taken in challenging conditions, make sure to check out my masterclass and pro sets, where I teach you exactly what you need to know about photo editing in Photoshop. And with my pro sets, I enable you with just one click to transform your raw files into a great starting point for the editing process. So if you want to make your life much easier, have much better looking photos, make sure to check all these out down there in the description. Let's talk about Canon's new secret prime lens. Last night I've been reading that Canon is very likely to fairly soon release a new big prime lens. Which lens that's going to be exactly, we don't know at this stage, but there's a few awesome candidates like the 200 to 500 with built-in 1.4 extender that we spoke about last week, an f4 500mm lens completely redesigned, or a 2.8 300mm lens completely redesigned. I think those three are probably the most likely candidates. Although personally I must say, if there was a completely redesigned f4 500mm lens and it didn't have a built-in 1.4 extender, I would be a little bit disappointed, because I feel like Nikon really pushed the boundaries when it comes to the big prime lenses and having the built-in 1.4 extenders, so I would love to see something similar from Canon. There's also the chance I might do another lens like the f11, 800 or 600mm lenses, but I don't know which kind of lens they would actually do in that style. Are they going to do 5 different 400mm lenses like Nikon? I probably don't think so. And are they going to do a lens like an f11 1200mm lens? Also unlikely. So I think the first 3 lenses I mentioned, the 200 to 500, the 2.8 300 or f4 500mm lens, are the most likely. Do you guys agree with me? Or is there another lens that you think is going to come first? Let me know in the comments. Let's talk about the topic of the day and why I think that Canon should not be releasing an R5 Mark II anytime soon. I've no doubt that an R5 Mark II would actually be a nice upgrade to an R5. However, I feel like if Canon brings out an R5 Mark II so soon, it won't really address many of the issues that the current R5 has. First of all, I don't really feel like an R5 has to be replaced at this stage. I've taken hundreds of thousands of images with my 2 R5 bodies, and even compared to my R3 body, the R5 performs amazingly well, and I know so many people that love and use the camera every day, and I'm sure camera sales for an R5 are also still very reasonable. I also think there's no real competition for an R5 currently. Neither Sony nor Nikon has a camera that offers this kind of performance for this kind of price. So in that sense, the R5 is still very unique for me and don't necessarily need a replacement right now. So let's take a look at the shortcomings of the current R5 that I would want to see addressed in an R5 Mark II. First of all, the autofocus is not as advanced as the R3 or the R6 Mark II. While there's not a huge difference, there's definitely a few more options and a little bit better performance in the R3 and the R6 Mark II. In saying that, I actually feel like the R5 autofocus is a little bit easier to use in the field. Secondly, I would really like Canon to address the too slow readout speed of the sensor that causes rolling shutter and causes some of these annoying wobbles that I see with some lenses that is caused by the slow readout speed in combination with the IBIS. So I would definitely like Canon to address that. I also don't want to see any more 12-bit or 13-bit RAW files. I would want 14-bit or higher RAW files throughout all kind of shutter modes and speeds. So the current R5 only gives you 12-bit RAW files in the electronic shutter mode, and this is something that I would not want to see in an R5 Mark II anymore. I would want 14 RAW files in everything. And lastly, the current R5 has a 29:59 recording limit, which is super annoying. That should definitely go. And Canon will need to address some more of the overheating that the current R5 has, that has been addressed through firmware to a large degree, but it's still there, and I think Canon can do a much better job in dealing with the overheating of the camera. So to me, those are the 4-5 main things that should be addressed. However, I feel like if Canon brings out an R5 Mark II in the next 4, 5, 6 months, most of the things won't actually be addressed. They might address the overheating and some of the video features, like the time limit that can just be removed, no problem, and they will easily add the R3 and R6 autofocus. However, the main issue I think that's there is the sensor and the too slow readout speed, and that could only really be addressed with a stacked BSI sensor. But I feel like if an R5 Mark II comes out this quickly, it won't have a stacked sensor, so it will still have rolling shutter and these wobbles, and that would personally be quite disappointing for me. I have a feeling that Canon will address some of these issues I've been talking about only in an R1 camera body. So if an R5 Mark II will be released too far ahead of an R1, I feel like it will just be a minor update and won't be using any of the technology Canon might be putting into an R1 body. So as you can see, I'm actually not against an R5 Mark II at all. I just would like it to be a big step ahead like the R5 was when it was released, rather than just a minor update. I think the R6 Mark II is a good example. It's a nice update from the R6, but it's also not like groundbreaking new technology. Would I buy an R5 Mark II if it came out in March, for instance? Of course I would, but I'd actually rather wait a little bit longer and get a camera that comes out with a big bang. And the other question I have, why do I actually need an R5 Mark II before an R1? The obvious camera that's missing from the Canon lineup is an R1 with 45 to 60 megapixels in the R3 body with a stacked BSI super fast readout sensors. There's no rolling shutter, no wobbles, no overheating, great autofocus like the R3 or even better, and nice 8K 30 or 60 video, and nice downsampled 4K 30, 60, 120 video that doesn't overheat. And why can't we have that? That's the camera that's, for me personally, really missing, the camera that I feel like I need in the field. So please, Canon, give us an R1. Last week we've been talking about the Sigma 60 to 600mm lens, and I've watched a few more videos about it, and I started to wonder, how does this lens actually fit into the lineup and compare to some of the other Sony lenses, especially the amazing 200 to 600mm lens? Because the 200 to 600mm lens is actually cheaper, even though it's only by $1, and much lighter. So you get a native Sony lens that's cheaper and lighter. So what's the real benefit of having that Sigma lens other than the range from 60 to 200mm? So if that range is very important to you, and you like that wide zoom lens that allows you to maybe leave another lens at home because you go from 60 to 600mm, that Sigma lens may still be interesting to you. But I think for most other people that mainly shoot on the long end, the 200 to 600 actually seems like a much more attractive lens. Would you guys agree? So let's wrap it up for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up for the video. Make sure to check out my Pro Sets and Masterclass down in the description. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to the channel somewhere down there, and I'll see you in the next video very soon. Bye guys.